and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and we are in the Socrates and Jesus book yet again, because it is so damn good. Last time we explored the underlying analogy behind the minds of Abrahamic religious believers. Christians, Muslims, and Jews all have the same root, Abraham. What did Abraham do? He was going to kill his son because Sky Daddy told him to. God told him to. He was going to murder somebody, so murdered a human, not just murdering a human, sacrificing something he loved the most. And it was that action that became the bedrock of who God chose to be, that was the standard. The people who were like Abraham, the descendants of Abraham, the people who act in this way became the chosen people. The ones that were, looking at the text here, fiercely is the word. Let me search for it. Fiercely obedient. Fierce believers of Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son that made God so pleased that he formed a clan worthy, fierce believers from Abraham's descendants. These were called the chosen people, given the right to conquer and possess the land of others. Okay, so God became the ally or the attack dog of these descendants and followers, fierce believers willing to do the worst possible things if authority says so. And God's vision, highest vision for mankind, is that they be the rulers. So, therefore, people in that lineage are not following their own will, they're sacrificing their own will to follow the will of Abraham, or Abraham's God. To act act with what is consistent with Abraham's fearful legacy from his wrathful God. So, losing our will, losing our freedom to stay within the limits and do those sorts of things. And last time, we saw also that these people are quite happy to murder other human beings, which is a bad thing. And therefore, if we want to put an end to this senseless murder that's being carried out in the name of God, we have to go to the root. Address the root cause of a problem is needed to solve a problem. And what's the root cause? An analogy. An analogy. As Abraham was to his son, as Abraham was to his God, so too, modern Abrahamic believers have to be to what they love, and to their authority figures claiming to speak for God. That's an analogy. As Abraham was going to murder his son, so too modern Christians, modern Jews, modern Muslims can kill other people who are not within their group. Okay, the root analogy that we carry with us. Now, we compared that to, last time, what we understand of the pathologos. All human beings carry an analogy as well from their own childhood. The analogy being, my present is like my past. There was a certain scene that I played out in my past. When I was relating to what I most loved, usually. When I was engaged in my own self-understanding. Where my God King of the house, parental figures, came in and said, no, you can't. Here are the limits. You cannot be involved in your own understanding. You have to believe. You cannot be engaging with what you love in that kind of a way. accept these limits. And from that scene, we developed an analogy that we carry with us our whole lives that ties our present to the past. If the present is like the past, there's the analogy, then therefore, if I engage in what I love in the present, I will be crushed in the way that I was in the past. All human beings carry this analogy. All human beings who have not yet gone through philosophical midwifery, which is the systematic, skillful approach to that analogy to uncover and address it and resolve it. Dream analysis is also necessary because dreams will give us the guidance, will point to things we've overlooked, and will help us complete that resolving of our problems. So if one is not participating in philosophical midwifery and dream analysis, one is still carrying that analogy with them in their world that causes their problems, ties them to a set behavior. Why is that? Because from that origin scene, we developed a false image of the self, our mask. Some people call it the ego, but that's a kind of a loaded term with the way that it's used currently, so self-image is best. And a self-image ties us to a way of being. And that way of being, we act in our present and causes our, as one identifies with a self-image, it brings with it a fixed way of being that limits and blocks our spiritual development. That's called the pathologos. So, as all human beings develop a false image of the self that ties them to a fixed way of being, that blocks their spiritual development of understanding towards using the mind to know the mind and then to know thyself. So too, as an analogy, Abrahamic believers accept an image of Abraham and God, causing a fixed way of being in relation to themselves and others that limits and blocks their spiritual and personal development as well, causing problems. So we can see a very close analogical relationship between the pathologos in each element of its functioning in relation to one's self-image and Abrahamic religions, an image of God from Abraham. Isn't it interesting? So, necessarily, for both, you have to accept a limit, causing us to be in conflict because our soul is unlimited and will willingly go along with whatever limits you impose upon it in your life. Meaning you also have the capacity to free yourself, do the work, understand the root cause of your religious and pathologos beliefs, and genuinely seek truth and excellence. Your spirit will go along with that too. So there's a conflict between limit and unlimit within themselves. And of course, in accepting that those limits, if you do, you lose your own will, your own life's purpose, but you gain an identity and a promised power to be you gain an identity and clan membership and whatever promises that they give you along with that. So, sacrificing what's most important, the mind, your will, your freedom, understanding, development, your purpose, you have to sacrifice all that to get a lovely red hat that says MAGA is number one or Jesus is number one. but really it's you gain an identity within a clan that is simply carrying on the ignorance of Abraham through an analogy, an image, and a fixed way of being. So, that's what's happening. And if we want to put an end to people willing to murder non-believers or people who look different, we have to address it. In the same way, if we want to end our own individual problems and blocks we face in our everyday life, we have to equally address the root cause of our pathologos problems. So, super informative, relevant, meaningful, succinct, beautiful, elegantly written wisdom bombs dropped on our asses last time. How significant is that? Wowzers. Wow! So, let's jump in and keep reading. Cheers if you have a coffee. Updates. So let's jump in about here. Modern Christians are Pauline Jews because Paul wanted to bring the circumcised and those circumcised in a spirit into a new clan, the new chosen people. And that's the guy who modern Christians follow, who himself denies Jesus. And then we have Mark, the denier of the denier. So these are two possible ways that you can interpret or respond to truth. And one of them happens to be Pauline, so we can understand modern Christians as simply Pauline Jews. Isn't that interesting? Thomas ignored the arrest, trial, crucifixion, and resurrection, which would indicate to us that it didn't happen. So maybe those three steps, the arrest, trial, and crucifixion, Mark added to tell the story of the pathetic hero, one who has a tragic flaw, follows all of the steps of a Greek tragedy, except for the last one, where you're supposed to realize that your false belief that you've neglected to address and your way of being was wrong and the cause of your tragic demise. Jesus didn't have that, putting him in a class below the tragic hero of the pathetic hero. Oh God, why have you abandoned me? So if Thomas, and we know that Paul added the resurrection to save that story. Oh yes, but even though it follows all of the steps of a tragic and a pathetic hero, magic happened at the end and actually he won after all. That scene from Simpsons where Poochie ascends to heaven. I have to go back to my home planet. Goodbye. And Poochie, at the end of the episode, magics his way back to space. Which helps us understand why Mark's understood as a denier. Denying Paul by adding those elements in. Perhaps. Or Thomas just forgot. The Gnostic Gospel of Thomas that we found in Egypt in the 60s. One of the ones buried or burnt by the church. We rediscovered a copy, some copies, and and it didn't include those elements. So that's curious. Okay, Abraham's descendants, those who are willing to do the worst things because, by the way, do the worst things without any evidence, without any proof. conflicting with all good and reason. That's who I want on my team, says Abraham's God. Put limits on the mind, which means we don't explore metaphysics and theology. We have to sacrifice the highest use of our mind. What can humans do? Well, we can think and reason and understand. But what's the highest thing we can understand? The nature of reality. That's metaphysics. What is the nature of existence? What is the cause of things? Where do we go when we die? Why are we here? This is metaphysics. What's the nature of the eternal? That which creates every moment? That's theology, the study of the divine, the study of the Dios. You have to ignore all that to accept the limits of being a believer. So you take what is a intelligent, creative, thoughtful, wonderful person and make them a stupid piece of garbage to be a believer. A savage, mindless, brainless caveman. I'm willing to murder people who I'm told to murder. Rather than reflect on what makes us the same, reflect on what solves problems, reflect on our purpose, how do we solve problems and bring out human excellence. All of the wonderful things we can do, you have to sacrifice all that to be a believer. So we can really understand why belief-based thinking makes us stupid, savage, caveman zombies. And our job, the meaning of life, is to transition from that way of thinking completely to make the leap into a new way of relating to reality through the dialectic, through the logos, through understanding. One causes conflict and is and is defined by conflict. A conflict between the logos pairs. So the elements of consciousness, the elements of mind, the selfers we call them, whole, part, same, different. A conflict between all of them. And a conflict in our functioning. Last time we discovered there's a new way of understanding what it means to be in the state of a belief, of a believer. Not only a conflict between the parts, but as a whole, other than others. You are other than the people who are trying to understand. You are other than the people who are going through their spiritual development internally through their own use of the mind to know the mind and to know the self. You are even other from others in your group. You're not the same as them. You know that your opinions are different than theirs. You know that your way of being is different than theirs. But you're also other from others yourself. You are other from your own self. You know that you have betrayed yourself to accept a lie, to be a member of a group. A lie that diminishes your own value and your highest functioning. So other from others is what it means to be a believer. So no wonder there's a lack of empathy or a feeling and understanding of sameness within the class of people we call believers. The ones that are quite willing to kill others, genocide others, starve others, etc. They are other than others. No sameness, no connection, no intelligibility. Last time we looked at how that category is itself. Of the 5 states of mind we've identified in the text already, the best, the state of self, know thyself, without which your system is empty and hollow. The second highest state of mind or state of being, to grasp the logos, to grasp mind and intelligibility as a oneness out of time, or the eternal, or theology, knowledge. The brilliant light of being, second highest state. The third is to follow the logos and to unify the logos in time, understanding. love and logos, philodianoia, use of the dialectic. These three all have ousia, self-reflection, and logos, the dialectic understanding. They're all intelligible, rational, sane, and they're all states of self. These are all states of enlightenment or states of excellence. Which means you can find fancy words for them. Jiriki, prajna, depending on what tradition you want to pull out from. So you can use this understanding, by the way, as you read other spiritual texts or other Eastern spiritual works, and you can hear them describe their states. This is the Atman, this is the Brahman. Oh, it's not mysterious to me anymore because I understand it rationally and simply, because I've got the logos. Hooray. Same with states of excellence, being in the zone, or jiriki. Prajna. You can find the words in the other texts that they use for these, but what we've got is the logos, which makes it simple, rational, universal, homogeneous is the fancy word. So these are the three states of self we're moving into. And the two irrational, harmful ones, believers, a conflict between rationality, between the logos pairs, a conflict within the soul, conflict and harm and suffering, and the power to harm taken as the feeling of knowing, sadism. So, sadism, the desire and enjoyment of inflicting harm on others, other to others, belief. And last time we saw that, hey, other to other. Which is interesting because other to other goes along with self to self, self to other to other, and other back to self as the four categories of the dialectic. So the dialectic has those four categories, and the terms used within the logos terms. So here we are understanding it, conflict between the individuals, but you can also understand this as the category itself. Understand it as a whole, other to other, understand it as parts, a conflict relationship between each of the parts. I'm limited, but I want to be free. I'm a part, but I want to be a whole, and I'm never going to be a whole. So, interesting. By the way, this can't be a debate. It can't be, it's just reason. Like, you can't debate if 2 and 2 is 4. You either see it or you don't. The people who wish to engage in debate over opinions are in here. Socrates calls this philonikos, love of fighting, love of debating, love of contention, love of drama, love of slop. 10 Christians owned by 1 atheist. Conflict, drama, slop. How are those 10 Christians helped? Whereas, if that 1 atheist was a 1 philosopher, you could help them see, oh, do you notice a conflict between yourself? Do you feel other than others? Therefore, what would it be like to be in harmony between whole and part? What would it be like to be rational? What would it be like to reclaim ousia and logos, which is rejected below this line? What would it be like to actually solve the problems? Not just say, oh, Yeah, Jesus said, you said you're sorry? Okay, you're forgiven. Magic. But you still got your problem and you haven't learnt anything. What would it be like to actually understand problems? What would it be actually like to actually understand the nature of God and unify with it as pure consciousness? And to know the self? And to reach your other goals in your life? That's not a debate, that's helping people. Something you can only really do with understanding. Okay. This idea of God being your attack dog, and his highest goal for reality is for you to be in charge. Abrahamic religions. In the story of Jesus in Mark, Jesus was hoping to do the same thing by forcing his hand, saving him from the cross, to show, hey, look, now God answers to me. And it was to show that that's silly. But Paul tried to save this idea by inventing the resurrection. Oh, but it did work. Oh, and Paul says, oh, but actually obey me. So that's the modern Christianity. Those who become a follower of Abraham in that tradition, gain an identity and power, do so at the cost of the higher functioning of their minds. That's a limit to your way of being. These people depend on God's will to direct them in everything they do. Whereas there are others who depend on their own teaching and efforts to direct them in what they do. So one group following the will in everything they do of Abraham's idea of God, Abraham's bullshit ignorance of God, is other from these others who try to develop and understand themselves. So, to obey and serve the will and interests of their God is a master-servant relationship. And they must conquer lands and subject all to the will of their God. That means sacrificing their own goals and interests for the sake of the whole. Forced conscription into the holy war. Let's ignore the fact that the people who are actually benefiting are the people who never go to war and sit on the golden thrones. Mr. Pope, Mr. Leader. Craziness. Complete idiocy. But it's important to understand where it comes from. Abraham, a guy thousands of years ago, who did the worst kind of thing and tried to get followers who were as gullible as that. So gullible you're willing to sacrifice your will, freedom, your life to be a pawn. But you get a red t-shirt, you get a red hat. You get to be a member of the group. The group that kills others, by the way. So bullying, thuggery, savagery. That's our human race. Unless we wake up to the game of understanding. So sacrifice your own goals, kill others so you can get their stuff. And in return, you get to be a part of a whole. Hooray. By the way, master-slave relationship, you hide that from yourself. Even though that's the relationship, the job is as a Christian to pretend, to lie. No, God is my friend. Jesus is in my heart. No, it's a slave master. That's the conflict. You want to be free, unlimited, but you have to accept all of these limits. You are other from yourself, other from others. Followers share a likeness or commonness with each other, but they are different. So same but different. Like and unlike. Oh, here we go. They are different from the other group. Right. So followers of a group are the same in that, or are common, in that you have to accept these limitations and you have to lie to yourself. But they differ from the other group who seek the direction of their spiritual path within themselves and do so through the use of the mind. They must stand alone from those who use the mind to know the mind, otherwise they would abandon their God and seek to follow the command to know thyself. So there we have it. There's one idea, know thyself, a command. What's the meaning of life? Know thyself. To do that, you have to sacrifice to be a slave to an irrational, ignorant image of God from Abraham. Now, when you say it like that, it seems like something you would easily sacrifice. But they don't tell you this. Should be day one. So if we had genuine religious education, it'd be this. This is the root analogy behind Abrahamic religions. This is how you function. This is how you understand it rationally. And this is how you can use that understanding to recognize anything else in that system. Any other religion. Maybe even religions that haven't yet been invented. That's learning. That would be education. You have to remain within your self-imposed limits and know that even among the others in the group, they have betrayed their self to follow God's will. Betrayed yourself to follow God's will. So in relation to each other and within themselves, they know they have sacrificed themselves in obedience to their God. Among themselves, they experience this tension since they are like themselves and like each other, but on the other hand, they experience that they are unlike those members of the other system and suffer that loss while keeping it from one another. You don't talk about how you want to be free. You don't talk about how you like to reach certain goals. You don't talk about how you'd like to understand. There's the tension. Like and unlike, same, different, whole, part, limit, unlimited. And, as a category, other than another. So the parts and the whole being other from another. Which is the dialectic. You can have a partial logos, you can be a zombie and say brains, and achieve everyday goals, but it has to be consistent with the demands of God. You must agree not to free yourself, and you mustn't enter the logos. You are free to master the everyday world, manipulate the stocks and that kind of stuff, bomb non-believers, but you have to ignore the furthermost reach of the mind. Don't engage in anything good. Just kill people, manipulate people, get the dollar bills, y'all. Scam the believers, get that $1 billion jet. But never use your mind. Never awaken your higher functioning and never fulfill your purpose, the command to know the self. If you don't ignore the furthermost reach of the mind, or else you will lose what you have treasured the most. Yes, and sacrifice all that to treasure being a member of a group. Group identity with their God. And that's the tragic thing when you see people who've gone through trauma or whatever, or gone through difficult times, and they have been taught, hey, you know what you can hold on to? Jesus will always be with you, and we will accept you, kind of. So treasure the most an identity, even when everyone else puts you down, or calls you bad because you're poor, or bad because you're a woman, or bad because you're not white, or bad because whatever. We will say that you are actually, they're all wrong. God loves you the most. And we will accept you within the group so long as you be a slave. So you teach these people who are most vulnerable to treasure the most a group identity with that idea of God. That's abuse. That's abuse. And it's difficult to see when I'm out playing music or something, or just out, and you see these nutjob sadists preaching how everyone else sucks except for if you join our group. And people laugh at them, but the people who they get, like a multi-level marketing scheme, are the people who are most vulnerable, the people who are suffering the most, or the people who are the least intelligent, least familiar with thinking for themselves. So the people in our society we need to be protecting the most and helping the most, we allow to be abused by this con that we call Abrahamic religion. So, ignore their mind to keep what they have treasured the most, group identity with their God. They participate in limit while their own spirit is unlimited, since their spirit will willingly play along with whatever subordinate role is their fate. So our spirit wants to know the self. Our spirit wants to reach our destiny. Fate is what happens if you, the inevitable consequences of your ignorance and tragedy. Fate is bad. The opposite is destiny. The true purpose, if we are free to find what we were here for. That's what the word means. That's only what it means. No one gets to steal that word. Our highest purpose for all living beings. Our spirit wants that, but will play along with your fate. Your spirit is free to go along with what you choose, even if it's the bad choice, fate. So, participate in those limits of religion while our spirit is unlimited. There we have another self-pair, limit and unlimit. Jesus himself is limited in that he finds it difficult to agree with what we've just outlined with pure reason, that we can ourselves apply to our world, to individuals we know, and to the world at large, and find, yeah, it fits. It beautifully, succinctly, and necessarily explains the conflicts and the difficulties we see in the world as a whole and in individual parts. Brilliant. A banger. Wow. Wow. But difficult to accept, even though there can be nothing to oppose it. That's the significance of understanding. It's not a debate. It's not like, well, I disagree. No, if you disagree, then you're fucking wrong. 2 and 2 is 4? Well, I actually have different opinions. You see, I read Mein Kampf, and it said 2 and 2 is 8 because racism. No, it's not what reasoning is, you idiot. That's why debates are dumb. Understanding, dialogue, question and answer, following a questioner who has a better skill and understanding than you, being open and curious and seeking truth enough to follow those questions and answer those questions without tangents. That's the game. That's what makes beautiful people beautiful. And there are some out there. We need to be willing to go along with them. That's the skill of the dialectic. Not debate. Debate's dumb. Well, I disagree. Why? Nothing. I have nothing to oppose it. I just disagree. That's Jesus in the book right here. How could you disagree with it? It's just what it is. But here's the thing. Why would you want to? That's the issue. Why would you want to abandon reason and understanding? That applies to every Abrahamic religion and every period of time, on every planet, in any dimension you find yourself in this life and beyond. Why would you abandon or not want a kind of learning that you can take with you beyond this lifetime? That also most accurately understands everything in this lifetime. Well, I've got a right to have my beliefs. That's not a right, you idiot. I've got a right to punch myself in the nose. That's not a right. Rights are good things that benefit. You have a right to the logos. You have a right to understand. You have a right to abandon these limits to become free. It's always, I've heard people say, I've got a right to think whatever I want. Remember being in class once and helping someone understand something about music. I've got a right to do it the wrong way. Literally is what the guy said. I'm like, what kind of a dumb thing is that to say? You've got a right to do it wrong? I don't think that's a right, pal. You can do it wrong. But behind it is whatever fear of punishment he's afraid of getting for being wrong. I would guess. I don't know. I'd have to talk to them more if they were open to it. Why do you want to be fiercely loyal to what causes you harm? Which is a conversation we need to have. Why are you fiercely loyal to MAGA if MAGA is causing you harm? Taking away your money and siphoning it to the billionaire sadists? Why do you vote against your interests? That needs to be addressed. And the systems that are allowed to lie? Fox News? Why do we not have laws that say you can't knowingly lie? Because seeing as lying gets people to act against what's in their interests. Do we want people to act against their interests? Then why do we allow lying? Do we want people to harm themselves and others? Then why is lying allowed? Because I get to manipulate people to get their money and get them to kill people I don't like. Why is that a principle? Why does this sadist, fascist get to play out his ignorance at the expense of millions and millions of people getting to play out their goodness? Why is it the badness and sadistic cruelty of one person? Why does that trump the benefit and well-being of millions of other people? That's the irrationality of our humanity at the moment. The immaturity and irrationality towards ourselves. We are functioning other to others. Which goes back to the hypothesis that the meaning of life is to move from belief-based cognitive functioning to understanding, which implies we are, as a species, here. We are functioning in all of our laws and all of our spiritual traditions, and especially the Abrahamic ones. We are functioning other to others, which defines as a whole this belief. We treat other people as if they're less. Racism, Jordan Peterson's dominance hierarchy. Yes, me as the white Christian male is better than the females and the black people. Their brains are small, you see. Stupid Peterson. Moron. Why? He has failed to address this. Beliefs. That's our species. So for individuals and as a species, our job, our role, our purpose, the next stage in evolution is by definition to go from the cognitive function that we can understand using pure reason itself of other to other and functioning as if the people we are killing are other than each other, other than us. The people we're starving are others. The people who don't believe in MAGA are others. The people who don't believe in white supremacy are others. All that bullshit. 2, the providential way of relating to selves and others, from self to others, the functioning of the self through self logos, providentially, lovingly, caringly, rationally, intelligently, from the self. That's our job. That's our purpose. That's our destiny. The right word, destiny. That's what we're here for. And again, it's not a debate, that's just understanding. Why? Because we are using the building blocks of understanding to recognize what it means within this, to be in conflict with the self-logos, and we're using the structure of understanding, the dialectic, to say, hey, this is category 3 of the dialectic, that's category 2, this is the cause of problems, this lacks ousia and logos, this is unintelligible, savage, and this is what it means to, by definition, to be intelligibly functioning, to be rationally functioning, to be beneficial. So by definition, this is the next step. Pure reason, no opinions. At no point in that explanation did we point to anything in history or any physical thing, just pure reason. That's why it's undebatable. We can apply it to things in our physical world. That's what we've been doing. We've been understanding the nature of Abrahamic religions and the nature of pathologos that all people go through, to say all people have pathologos. And within, that's individuals, and within culture, yeah, it's the Abrahamic religions that are in control and are hurting people, murdering people, ourselves, because they feel, oh, that's not, those people are Muslims. They're the scary browns. They are other than us. So let's take our internal conflict and express it. Do unto others as we have suffered ourselves. Yeah, it applies. It applies so precisely that it's magical, not magical, beautiful, almost comical. What's one of the biggest events in the last couple hundred years? The fucking Holocaust, where the Jews were genocided. What are the Jews doing now? They're doing literal genocide. They're literally doing to others what they suffered themselves, which is the premise of the Abrahamic religion. God will smite those who smote me and bless those who bless me. And God's highest idea is for me to rule, and all the followers have to murder everyone and take their stuff. Literally. That's the significance of understanding. Because it's pure and universal or homogeneous, it has a scope over the individuals or the heterogeneous. It applies to everyone. There will never be any religion like this that will be outside of the scope. That's the significance of scope, or going from the particulars to the cause or the principle. Just like as a principle, if we were to rule ourselves rationally, we would have principles that apply to everyone. Everyone gets food. Everyone gets clean air. Everyone gets freedom. Not freedom to do harm. That's not freedom. Because they have the freedom to be free of that. It's principle that we're lacking in our society. Why? Because to have a principle requires you to understand that which is universal. To have a principle requires you to be at step 3, 2, or 1. By definition. Currently, we have believers in stage 4, and the modern Democrats, who are supposed to be helping us move up. That's what it means to progress. Progressives who have left the racists, but do not have any ideal or paradigm, so they're a mass of difference. So we have believers and strict dualists. Because while believers are in conflict between the parts, strict dualists have a disconnection. So, but we're here for. How well we can communicate it to every living person on the planet, that's the next step. And that's one of the reasons why I love this book, because it's promised. From belief-based functioning to understanding is the exact same model continuum from savages to sages, or from zombies to humans, or from cavemen and our inevitable extinction to being living in harmony with the cosmos. But it's also the exact same continuum of rejecting the new and being fiercely loyal to the old, like Abraham and his descendants, to letting go of the old, ignorant, harmful bullshit and fully embracing new truth and rationality. In other words, how well do we communicate this simple model? It's going to be contingent upon understanding the stages in this. Are you going to completely reject the old and try and send the good people to death like we did to Socrates? Are you going to partially embrace the new, like the Kabbalah? Are you going to try and blend the two together, like Thomas and James, the Gnostic Gospels we found in Egypt? Or are you going to do what you're supposed to do and jump? Stop trying to save the old, but just embrace the new, because it's good and true. And last time we looked at the fact that this jump is incommensurate. You can't be a little bit of a believer. You can't be a little bit of, murder a few people. Do what my preacher says he tells me to do. Kill some of the Browns or some of the women. But most of the time be engaged in the dialectic and helping people. What's understanding? Helping people to remove beliefs and develop understanding. I'm going to do that sometimes, but sometimes preach that it's good to have beliefs. Can't do it. Doesn't make sense. And that jump is expressed as the golden analogy. This one here. A is to B as B is to A plus B. Each of these terms are incommensurate with each other, meaning there's a jump. So, and here is the analogy. As one's way of being is descended from one's model. So, model is to being. That's the nature. We carry within ourselves a paradigm or a model, usually an unsuspected model. Philosophy is understanding metaphysics, which is understanding the true model. Again, understanding. Reclaiming your will. If you don't, they will give you a fake model. Brainwashing. Zombies. And your model is where your way of being comes. And your way of being is how you act, and how you act results in your future. That's the difference between fate and destiny. Tragic end and your highest goals. One's way of being is descended from one's model. As the God of Abraham was willing to murder his son as a sacrifice to his God, so the followers of Abraham must be willing to murder others to fulfill their will of God. So Abraham was willing to kill humans, so too you must be. That's the root model behind Abrahamic religions. A willingness to murder people that God says so. We can add another analogy. As one identifies with one's self-image, so too these followers of Abraham must act according to that image. So they have a fixed way of being that limits their spiritual development. So we have two analogies. We have as God of Abraham murdered his son, Abraham's son, so too followers of Abraham must be willing to murder others. Call it war, call it genocide, call it fighting terrorism, whatever you want to package it as in your marketing. It's just this simple analogy. Must be willing to murder others to fulfill. Hey, God promised us Palestine, right? Isn't that fulfilling the will of their God? Fulfill the will of their God. Okay. So there's the analogy. We have another analogy. As we're learning analogies too, so we're win-winning here.
It's a win-win.
Win-win. As we identify as one identifies with self-image, so here we have more terms within the analogy. We can have a simple analogy, 1:1. As God of Abraham murders his son, so followers of Abraham, Jews, Christians, and Muslims have to be willing to murder others to fulfill the will of God. As one identifies with the self-image, which we causes which we act according to, and therefore causes a fixed way of being which limits and blocks spiritual development. What color? Limits and blocks spiritual development. Okay. We're doing it, but we're also learning how to read, how to think, and how to teach. One day you will be making books like this. And you don't want to force feed people. That's just appealing to beliefs. You want to help people by giving them the pieces they need, that if they want to, they can apply their understanding themselves and develop their understanding to move from belief to understanding. So we are doing it. We're learning how to read, how to think, how to learn, but we're also learning how to teach. This is it. This is the analogy. Look what he's given us. Let's read it again. One's way of being can be descended from one's model then, or if, it's, by the way, it's an if, it's a hypothesis. To test it to see if it's true. If one's way of being can be descended from one's model, then, as the God of Abraham was willing to murder his son as a sacrifice to his God, so too the followers of Abraham must be willing to murder others to fulfill their way of God. So he's telling us, he's giving us the key. He's giving us one. Okay? This is the root analogy behind the behavior, or this is the root model that one's way of being is descended from. Why? Because the model is Abraham killing his son. The way of being of modern Abrahamics is to kill others if their God says so. Okay? That's the whole. Now, to understand the elements within that, you have to do some work, have some fun. So while he gave us that first one, here is what we need to do. We can add, meaning you can add, as one identifies with one's self-image, these followers of Abraham must act according to that image, so that they have a fixed way of being that blocks and limits their spiritual development. So what's he given us? He's given us the model of the analogy that you have to act according to. What's the model? One identifies with what? Self-image. So we have this here, this within the analogy, you've got two sets. One which is universal and one that applies to Abrahamics. Each of these double dots are relationships. So as one, and we can put this in brackets because identifies with is the meaning of this relationship. So one identifies with the self-image that they then act according to, that then causes a fixed way of being, that then limits and blocks their spiritual development. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms in that analogy. Your job is to find the specific for each of them. As one identifies with their self-image. This is the pathologos. We all get this. We all identify with the self-image that we act according to, that causes our fixed way of being, fate that limits and blocks our spiritual development. So too, that's for you to do. And by the way, he gives us one. In other words, get your readers started. Let them know there's a puzzle. When you're walking through the Resident Evil hallway, you see all these paintings, but the first one or the first two have the gems in the eyes, telling you, hey, these other paintings without gems in the eyes, you do it. That's playing the game. So the archetype is analogy for that, for all games. So two, Abrahamics identify with this image of the murderous Abraham. Which means your job is to say this, this, this. In other words, as the Abrahamic believers follow the image of Abraham, that's the root cause, the root analogy behind all of their functioning, behind their whole system, they would act according to it, wouldn't they? It would cause a fixed way of being, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it limit and block the spiritual development, wouldn't it? So use the text to fill out the specifics of how these three analogies play out. That's called understanding and reading. So use the text to fill out the specifics of these three, giving you an understanding, a specific understanding of Abrahamic religions. Abrahamic religious people. Identify with this. He's given you this one. As Abraham murdered his son, so too you have to be willing to murder others if God says so. What are the actions? What's their fixed way of being? What's the specific limits and blocks to their spiritual development? Using the text. In other words, go through the mansion of Resident Evil and find the gems that fit in here, here, and here. There's a difference between being a believer and passively reading and playing the game. Stretch. See? Gets you started. So when you're writing your own books, get the people started. Give them the first couple. Let them know there's a puzzle to be solved. So this book is a banger. He's not just demonstrating the difference between belief and understanding. He's giving us the material to go through it ourselves. This book is a yoga. It's a method, a spiritual method. If you do this. It's a banger. Not only does it break down understanding for us and understand what's most significant in our world, it gives us the game to play to actually develop understanding ourselves. It's like one of the most significant spiritual texts I've ever come across. It's a banger. And it's fun. Anyway. Okay, so an analogy that we can play with. That you can play with. I don't want to do all the work for you. And Jesus replies, I would not have expressed it in such terms. In what terms? In analogy that does what? Helps people themselves go to from belief to understanding. I would not have functioned as a guru, says Jesus, but I do see why you use that language. Does he? Does he really see? Not only that he is using pure reason, and the model, he uses the word model here, what's the model? Hang on. Put it in pink. One's way of being descends from one's model. Okay, that's an interesting principle. Is he using the principle right here? Not just by saying, hey, this is the model of Abraham killing his kid. No. The model Socrates is using is the model of human functioning. He's able to recognize that humans function from a model because he knows the model of human functioning. What's the model? One's way of being descends from one's model, or the model is one identifies with a self-image. Your self-image that you have identified with, I am Jed, this is what I am, from childhood, I act according to. That causes a fixed way of being. There are certain things Jed can and can't do. And that therefore will limit and block my spiritual development, so long as I am unaware of that image that I'm identified with. That's the model. We can apply it to anything. We're currently applying it to Abrahamics. But if there are these 5 ways of being, these here, so far that we have, then you could be identified with any. Or a self-image that reflects a massive difference. I'm just a small being. A self-image that reflects this. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm a Muslim. And a self-image that reflects this. Hey, I'm a this person. Or this one. This is the dangerous one, because as it's the greatest possible experience, it's hard to imagine anything beyond it. It's impossible to imagine a greater experience because it's the height of experience. It's the limit of experience. Taoists. If they identify with it, they're going to be blocked from their spiritual development to knowing the self, because there's a higher state. The tragedy of Taoism, or the tragedy of enlightenment, some people call it. It's a model. Whatever your image is that you identify with the self, if it ain't this one, you're blocked. The thing about this one is it's not an image. So he's saying, here's the model. These people we happen to be talking about now are this, others to others. But everyone's way of being is based on a image that they act according to. Where is it? Everyone has, until they reach the self, identifies with some image. There's something that you think is you, different from others, that you act according to, that causes your fixed way of being. We can add in fate. We can put another one in here, fate. Fit that in if you like. That limits your spiritual development, blocks it. Now, we just happen to be applying it to Abrahamic religions because they are the biggest representation of believers or others to others. They identify with murderous Abraham. That's the self-image. That's the image of what it means to be a self. To be willing to murder people if God says so. Thus, war, genocide, conflict. Not solving problems through rationality, 3, 2, and 1. Nope. Just murdering people and taking their shit. Savage. Where we are at our development. Until, of course, we learn this. We learn the underlying root analogy behind the thinking that causes human beings to have problems. That requires us to also understand the root model of human problems themselves. That's why the philosophical midwifery book we read here is the paradigm for understanding human problems. That's why I've spent my life doing my best to help people, to reach out to people who seem to be the best and say, hey, you're interested in solving problems? Here's where you find it. You want to be a good person? You want to free yourself? You want to be a good influence in the world? You want to understand why you're here? It's this. This. One identifies with the self-image that they act according to, which causes a fixed way of being that will limit and block their spiritual development. But if you understand that you can address that self-image, that's called philosophical midwifery. It's not a philosophy, it's the philosophy. It's not a spiritual method, it's the spiritual method. It's not a mode of psychotherapy, it's the model of solving problems. It's neat. But because it's true, not all human beings are going to like that. Human beings are going to have some reaction to truth along this continuum, rejecting the new, fiercely loyal to the old, or open to making that jump. They're going to be somewhere along this continuum. But, you know, what do they say? Another day, another dollar. I wake up the next day and I try my best again. Look for the people who are open to this kind of thing, to share that which will help them, and if it becomes a way of being, help everyone. Another day, another stream. How about that? Another day, another sound drop.
I've been a bad little girl.
Okay, Emma. So, I wouldn't have expressed it in such a way that not only understands the nature of believers, that blows up your problem, Jesus. If Jesus would have expressed it in such terms, he probably wouldn't have been stuck in his problems. But also, if he expressed it in such a way with an incomplete analogy, while given a couple, so you've been given the key, he gave us the first couple, he gave us all of these, therefore he's functioning as a teacher. But not just a teacher in the spiritual tradition of understanding. Therefore, guru. So Jesus is saying, I wouldn't have expressed it as a guru does, which is funny, because he's supposed to be the guru for a lot of people. The only one. I only follow Jesus. Jesus is my teacher. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light. Well, he's not a fucking guru. Otherwise, he'd be talking in this way. You're a fantastic student to a bullshit teacher. Which is the nature of all human beings. Because we identify with a self-image we get from our childhood, from our king priest parents. It's all human problems. It's not a blame game. It's an understanding game. So, Jesus gave birth to what Socrates expected him to give birth to. Is it a complete birth? He sees it a little bit, but he's still blocked. So where do we go from that? Let's keep reading. Socrates. Now putting the matter that way offers me a way to explore another parallel. For now we can ask, what was ignored or added as it moved from Thomas? Remember, Thomas was Jesus' twin. Talked about understanding, over belief, talked about knowledge, talked about knowing the self, but didn't have the language or mastery to be able to explain any of those in depth. Therefore, still had his problems, because you need understanding to solve problems. That's midwifery. Didn't reach his goal. What was his problems? One of his problems was sexual hang-ups, because he explained the cause of human problems as sexual expression. And we get that. We get that from all people who are not in the game. Because unless you're in the game of developing understanding, which gives you what we've been using today, the logos, the universal principles of thinking to explain things, to address problems, to address all problems here and individual problems here, unless you're using the logos, you will fall back on your beliefs. So as Socrates said, you will sanctify the false beliefs on the cave of ignorance. Your bullshit beliefs you will project on the world. It's not just that I don't like people wearing hats. It's disrespectful, says some old gross boomer. It's disrespectful to wear a hat. No, that's just your belief that you've never questioned from your bullshit parents. It's not just my belief that I should be king of the world, says Netanyahu or Trump. God says, or George Bush, or all of them, all the fascists. God says so. It's not just I should be king of England. God says so. I've got the divine right of kings. So pedestalizing or sanctifying, making sacred your stupid false beliefs that cause your fucking problems, that's the nature of human, well, the way that humans function to explain human problems. Projection, which is the cave analogy. You project your own false beliefs and opinions onto the world, and you sanctify them as ultimate reality. Hey, it's not just that I'm sexist, it's that the world is sexist. Every racist. I'm not racist, but it's true that, and then they'll spew some racist horseshit. Sanctifying our beliefs. I've got a right to believe XYZ. You've got a right to understand, pal. So that's Thomas. Didn't get into understanding knowledge and knowing thyself, but talked about it as significant while still projecting his problems to understand human ignorance. So we call him the vol-cell, the voluntarily celibate. So what was ignored or added since it moved from Thomas? Clearly, since truth is what we seek, it would be important to also look behind the words and seek to identify what springs from these words. Those words. Yes, says Jesus, seeking truth brings one to face the mystery hidden behind the spiritual quest. Okay. Sounds nice. What does that mean? It is said that when mysteries become obvious, then the many are seen as reflections of that which is itself a reflection. The many are reflections from something which is itself a reflection. So it sounds like there is the mystery hidden that's behind the spiritual quest. Is that while the many are reflections of something, that which it is a reflection of is itself a reflection. So it sounds like just from these two sentences, the mystery is, well, what's that a reflection of? And Socrates, the many can only be entertained and not taught the mysteries. All right, this is the issue of my stream. They don't seek to understand those sacred things. Either they stand in awe of them, or they simply ignore them. Well, I think that my stream's entertaining, Jesus. So, screw you. Can my stream be entertaining and educational? Are you being edutained? Is there value in this? Is this peak valuetainment? Value, entertain valuement?
If you don't understand this, you're either being intentionally obtuse because you want to be mad at something and you just don't know what you're supposed to be mad at, or you're really stupid.
You can understand it and be entertained. Otherwise, you're the NPC chip meme or you're stupid. They don't seek to understand these sacred things. They either stand in awe of them or they ignore them. Okay. Which is interesting. Because that sounds like what I do when I play music. People could be ignoring, or they show an interest and they stand in awe of what's being played. But then I want to reach out and help them understand something. I will be wondering about that. What's today? Thursday. I might go out and play tonight. I'll be thinking about this transition tonight as I play. From ignoring to awe to understanding. All right. Your words reflect the meaning of the sages, Jesus, but my way is to show that those who possess skills, like those who are tanners, smiths, and shoemakers, have principles that underlie their skills, that are not different from the spiritual principles of philosophy. Ooh. Ooh. What? There are spiritual principles of philosophy that are similar to, or the same as, tanners, smiths, and shoemakers? That's interesting. Recall that my philosophy starts with the fundamental principle that as... Okay. What's Socrates' fundamental principle? That's a big one. As heaven is to earth. Oh, so here we have another analogy. Good thing that we've been doing all that work on understanding analogies, right, folks? As heaven, here's our first term, is to, this is our double dots, our single dots. As heaven is to earth. So, and this is our double dots here. So model is to the single dots, is to copy. So I'm not going to put that in the board because I want to be good like Socrates and give you something to write down. I helped you with the colors though. As heaven is to earth, so model is to copy. It is from their own work that I mold images of excellence. Wow. Does he? Since these contain all that man needs to become more noble and good. Wow. Oh, speaking of wondering about music as I play, meeting people where they're at. Or rather, drawing from their own work what they are familiar with, their own interests and principles, be they tanners, smiths, and shoemakers. Can you draw upon what they are familiar with to mold images of excellence? What would it be like to be the most excellent shoemaker, streamer, musician? These contain all man needs to become noble and good. As I explore these ideas, I reflect on the role of the gods that they have heard many times and weave my philosophy around them. Ooh. What will be the equivalent today? I guess you could use Jesus and Abraham and Elijah and Moses. You could also use Iron Man, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, the Marvel rivals, and weave your philosophy around them, maybe? Consider my analogy. As Theseus must slay them. Oh, we're analogy heavy today. As. All right, I've already. You look. As is to, so is to. You've got it, right? You don't have to keep going. As. So to. Now, in this particular one, as Theseus must slay the Minotaur. So we've got the terms that you can put. So you do this analogy as well. I'm not going to do this one. You do this one. But you can see the single dots. He's given you the relationship. So here it was, as heaven is to earth, so model is to copy. That analogy is defining, is the clue to defining the relationship. In other words, he's not telling you what... Oh, I'll write on the board. Hopefully you've already written it down, so I'm not... So as heaven is to earth, so too model is to copy. What? That's the question. What is the relationship? It's not given. That's your puzzle. What's the relationship between heaven and earth? To answer that, this is the greater side, and this is the lesser side of the analogy. To answer what you want to find, what's the real relationship between heaven and earth? That's what you want. You look to what you can see, whether you're a shoemaker, a tanner, or a blacksmith, or anything else, any sort of creator. You have some familiarity between model and copy because you've made shoes based on some model. You've made some painting based on some model, whether it be a person or an image in your mind. So you have some familiarity with the lesser. To understand this is the question. So using what you see of the relationship of model to copy, you can find what we're after here. How does heaven relate to earth? That's analogy. Notice, he's not spoon-feeding it to you. It's not something you repeat on Sundays as you chant, we believe in this, we believe in this, we believe in this. It's not belief, which causes conflicts. He's giving you a puzzle. If you reflect on, in your own time, in your own life, in your own wondering, in your own conversations with your friends over coffee, what's the connection between model and copy? Notice, homogeneous, universal. You're not talking about, did you hear that Janie slept with Jimmy and then Jimmy fought James? Oh, it's not gossip. Did you see who Tom Cruise is dating now? Oh. Did you see that Mr. Beast is in trouble again? Oh, did you see that Donald Trump is doing this again? It's not that. Not gossip. You're elevating your relationship because you're talking about ideas, universals. A kind of conversation you can have out of body. Kind of conversation you can have on different planes of existence, leaving Earth behind. Tom Cruise is on Earth, and Janie fighting with Betty is on Earth. So reflect on this over coffee with your friend. Because Socrates is saying, hey, the more you understand this, the more you'll understand the connection between heaven and earth. And the next one, as Theseus must slay, so the equivalent to Iron Man and Wonder Woman in their time would be Theseus slaying not who's the guy with the glove with the gems? Thanos. It's not Iron Man slaying Thanos or Mr. Fantastic slaying Galactus or Superman slaying Netanyahu in the latest Superman movie. It's the philosopher slaying death. Oh, spoilers for the... Not really a spoiler, but you know. Didn't happen, actually, so it's not a spoiler. So don't worry about that. It was my projection. So he's given us the relationship. So here we have the lesser would be let's start with the lesser. We have the lesser over here. Theseus, who is the hero. Theseus. Is 2. But he's given you this one. He's given you this one. Must slay is the relationship between the two nouns or the two terms. The Minotaur is the second term. Minotaur. Minotaur. So too. So too. The philosopher, you, the philosopher. If you're here, you love wisdom, so you are. Philodianoia is even better. Philosopher must slay death. But it's a metaphor. We have the... What color? let's go this one again. You have the lesser over here and the greater over here. This use of common characters that you're familiar with to give analogies that are not completed but for people to solve, if they apply themselves to it, that's formally mythology. Which we are interested in. Because we have recognized that the art, the skill, the archetype skill from which all skills are derived, or the thing we are here to master as the meaning of life as human beings, philodianoia, love and logos, has 4 aspects. And of course there does, because there are 4 parts of the dialectic. See? Definition, demonstration, division, conclusion. And we saw this is believer. If you apply the categories of the dialectic to states of human cognitive functioning, belief. You're always other than another. You're other than these others doing understanding. You're other than others in your church. And you're other than yourself because you're in conflict with your own spirit. But the 4 categories of the art of philodianoia, the art we're here to learn, the new way of being for mankind, is on the board somewhere. Surely. Here we go. There's one there, but is there a better one? Here we go. The art of philodianoia. The dialectic, that same structure, applied to what's true, philosophy, what we've been doing today. Understanding the truth of the cognitive functions, understanding the truth of analogy, understanding the truth of teaching, the truth of our purpose, the truth of what it means to be a believer. That's philosophy. The dialectic applied to what's false is midwifery, which would be uncovering that root image that you identify with, that you act according to, that causes your fixed way of being, that limits and blocks your development. See? Simply because I went through that analogy, had some fun drawing pictures on the board, now it's mine. Now I can see through it with a new way of being that can is not fixed but can evolve, because I can apply this understanding anywhere to anyone's problems and doesn't block and limit my development. So it's the opposite of all of these terms. I'm not identified with an image, I am following the logos that I will act according to here by using that analogy to explain what philosophical midwifery is. What is it? Oh, I just use that analogy. The logos. Oh, we're identified with an image, fixed way of being, act according to, or we act according to our image, resulting in a fixed way of being, blocking our development. See, I just used our analogy from before. Hooray. Which means I can take each one of those terms and do a new analogy, which is the dialectic, because the dialectic has what's true and what's false. Remember? The dialectic you do if the subject does exist, like if beauty does exist, but if the subject doesn't exist. But now I can apply that analogy to if that self-image doesn't exist. There was no self-image as I was going through that analogy just then. I was just following the analogy, following the logos. There is it. Here. So the dialectic applied to what's false is what frees us from that image that we identify with, that we act according to, that gives us a fixed way of being, that blocks our development, and we even causes us our tragic fate. But see how I applied it there? That's the significance of doing it yourself. That's why I say, hey, this book is a spiritual yoga. He's giving you these things to do yourself. But equally so, I can do the opposite. There was no self-image. I was not identified with anything. I was following the logos. Acting through understanding, which isn't a fixed way of being, but a free, because it can develop. It doesn't block me, but allows me to develop, evolve, or what would I say? Yeah, understand, develop, improve, understand, leading to my highest purpose or destiny, the opposite of faith. That's what the word destiny means for everyone. The highest purpose that we all are here to seek. See, analogies are fun.
I'm cute. Like, it's cutie pie.
That's Emma from the Majority Report. So there's a little demonstration of what we are defining as the significance of solving puzzles as we read. This is reading. Notice, no interpretation. At no point did I draw... Okay, I used fate and destiny, because those are two big words. But other than that, nothing was drawn from anywhere else other than the text. Reading without interpretation. Without projecting your religious or personal beliefs. Without sanctifying the images of ignorance on the wall of the cave of belief. To use the text. Taking your images on the cave as sanctified. God says so. So, Philodianoia applied to the dialectic applied to what's true. Philosophy. Apply it to what's false. That's the skill of removing that false image that we just talked about. Apply the dialectic to your dreams, and your dreams will give you help on how to do both. Help in your reading, help in your midwifery. But you might also want to share it with everyone, which is the whole point. It's a way of being for everyone. It's the destiny of everyone. It's the new way of being for everyone. Solving conflict and murder. Everyone has to drop this belief-based crap. All the children of Abraham have to realize that they're following someone who they shouldn't follow. Even if their mummy and daddy did it. Grow the fuck up. Your mummy and daddy are wrong. Easy. Look across the street. Do you think the mummy and daddy across the street are right all the time about everything? Of course not. Do you think your next door neighbors are? Of course not. Some random family living on the other side of the world, is their parents absolutely all-knowing and loving? Of course not. So stop being a baby and pretending yours were. They were just as ignorant as the guys across the street, next door, and over in that other country. Grow the fuck up. We say to people who are saying, but not my religion, not my Abrahamic religious beliefs, not my family pathologos, don't have time for this nonsense. Maturity. That's just maturity. So sharing it with those people without being as crass as you don't just say shut the fuck up or grow the fuck up and reflect on your dumb parents that you're imitating. As nice as it would be to be able to say that, it doesn't seem to help. So we share it with mythology. We tell a story about Iron Man or Captain America or Wonder Woman going through the stages. That's mythology. That's sharing it. Applying the dialectic and our insights of the dialectic through analogy to common characters, that's mythology. Rounding out the 4 aspects of the new way of being, Philodianoia. Love of understanding. And that's what we're doing now. So Theseus must slay the Minotaur. So in the first analogy, he didn't give you the relationship. You've got to figure it out by your reflections or your chats over coffee. Cheers. But here, similarly, you have to find the analogical equivalent in the greater sense. While Wonder Woman beats up Thanos, the philosopher doesn't beat up death. That would be silly. Although, I think there are death characters, the characters that represent death in the cinematic universe of Marvel or DC. I think Thanos was in love with death or something. As a character, as a lady. So sometimes they're literal. But the idea is, what would it be for a philosopher to slay death? That's for you to wonder about as you read the Phaedo. Because this is in the Phaedo. Wonder about this as you read the Phaedo. And have fun.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder?
Hee hee hee. As Theseus must slay the Minotaur, so too the philosopher must slay death. As with you, this... Oops, Socrates is talking. Where are you, Soc? Here you are. As with you, this was a central teaching that I often repeated. I stressed how... I stressed how to separate the soul from the body. And so experience dropping dead before one drops dead. Ooh. So there's a nice thing. What's philosophy? Experiencing dropping dead before one drops dead. Which is, I don't know, is that a metaphor or a myth? Not really, because it's kind of literal. But to separate the soul from the body. So think about how often we have to have bio breaks on the stream. To top up my coffee, or to take a leak, or any of that stuff, or to have another cookie. Imagine not having those difficulties of the body and continuing to explore your philosophy. Separated from your physical body. Also, of course, experiencing where we go after we die is significant if you want to know what you're supposed to be doing while you're here. Can't do that as a believer. So again, another example of what we sacrifice, that's the highest use of our mind. Imagine dropping dead before you drop dead. Pierre would say, you gotta drop dead a bunch of times before they finally bury you. I like that one. Because like they finally bury you. All right, he's done this a bunch of times. Let's finally throw him in the ground. Are you sure he's actually dead this time? Yes. Okay, finally let's bury him. By the way, this is the root behind every yoga. In the West, we've marketed it to sell money within the Aristotelian physical philosophy and the Abrahamic, you can't have experiences, but you can do material things. So we've marketed yoga as stretching, physical stretching in the West. It's not what yoga is. Yoga is this. Various different techniques people have used to separate the soul from the body or to drop dead before they finally bury you. All yogas have this as their goal. And then we can understand, well, how come it's not marketed that way in the West? Oh, remember? We're allowed to pursue goals in the physical world. So long as we don't have any meaningful explorations of metaphysics or theology. Or we can master the everyday world. So long as we agree not to free ourselves, yoga, and not to enter into the logos, again, yoga. And we ignore the utmost reach of the mind, yoga. But we can do things in the everyday world, physical world. That's why yoga is marketed in the West, where Abrahamic religions are key, as a physical thing. And not what it means to join with your soul out of body. Jesus comes in. You awaken your people to the mystery of life and death by awakening their fears and hopes about life and death. You lift their everyday experience to the level of the profound. Oh, that's good. I like this because this comes back to being a musician and to being a philosopher. How do you reach out to people? You take what they're familiar with and you elevate it to the profound. That's called analogy. What you do in the lesser realm, in the physical, building shoes or something, can you find the excellence in that will reflect the excellence of what it means to be a philosopher? Your model to creation, how does it reflect your heaven or being? Your own self as pure self consciousness, how that creates every moment in the physical world, similar to your everyday art. And the mystery behind that is even this, which creates the many, is itself as through model or reflection, is itself a reflection of something even higher. So that was the mystery we've been talking about as well. Elevating the mundane to the profound, or upward movement through analogy, is anagogic. Anagogic. Use that word to impress your friends. An upward spiritual movement from the lesser to the greater. Anagogic. It's a fun word. Anagogic. You lift their everyday experience anagogically, wink, 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 wink. You know, say it loudly so everyone at the coffee shop cheers. Wow. And thinks you are the smartest boy or girl. You allegorize their myths. Oh, here we go. Another way of saying, when you're using analogy specifically in the way we're talking about, to talk about our spiritual purpose, that's allegory. When it's anagogic, so you can say, oh, that's fun, let's do this. Whoops. We could say, this is analogy. We could say, oh, this is a fun one. This can be a bumper sticker. We'll put this on your fridge. One day, all of the Hassan Pikers 50,000 viewers and all of the Asmon Gold 50,000 viewers, I think it's now 10,000 because most of them were bots, but they will all come to my channel. And then people can join the Discord and send photos of their fridges, which will have all of these stickers. And they'll share photos of the back of their trucks that'll have all of these bumper stickers. Or they'll share a picture of their new couch, which will have all of these throw cushions with all of these words embroidered on it. And they'll be so fun. And then we'll read the book and it'll say, people don't want to learn or understand, they want to be entertained. And then we'll laugh because we're doing both. Because we have these wonderful entertaining photos on our Discord. And one of them will be this one. Analogy plus anagogic which is upward moving, anagogic equals allegory. Allegory is like an analogy or a myth that has a spiritual meaning, but another way of saying spiritual meaning is an anagogic movement. So we have this awesome expression. Allegory. Analogy plus anagogic equals allegory. Hooray. That's pretty neat. So take a photo of this on your fridge, make yourself a little fridge sticker or magnet, and send it into the Discord. And then we'll have, as soon as we hit 60,000 Twitch Discord members, we'll have a competition for the most funly decorated fridge. You allegorize their myths, the ones that they have already, that even the blacksmiths are familiar with, to show parallels with the spiritual plane. Whoops. I'm in the spiritual plane. Whee! I'm on the wrong screen. But did your Plato make as clear as he could have what you were doing? Is your teaching for all mankind or for only the Hellenes? Teaching for all mankind, I would say. I say that because Hellenic myths fall on deaf ears in the land of Judea. Oh. So that's another interesting thing. If most people are in the class of believers, this kind of a thing will fall on deaf ears. Even though destiny really means, the real word means for everyone. The purpose for all humans. And maybe even all sentient beings. So we say destiny of man. Falls on deaf ears in the land of Judea. Abrahamics, Jews. You are correct in raising that point, Jesus. My interpreter, Plato, gave only one sentence to describe this practice of death and dying. Ooh. And I have read this, and I have been puzzling over that one sentence for many, many years. Why only one sentence? He left that teaching without explaining how one must gather together the soul from the body when it is separating itself outside the body. Hang on. He left that teaching without explaining how one must gather together the soul from the body when it is separating itself outside the body. Ooh. Is it a gradual process or attained instantaneously? In missing that key factor, the understanding of this spiritual practice was left undeveloped. Ooh. For if the attainment is only seen all together and at once, then all the processes may lead to it, but are far different from it, just as understanding differs from knowledge, true knowledge. Now, this is fantastic. Remember what we have been seeing in our reviews lately? Space. That even though we can represent the development, evolution, purpose, or enlightenment of everyone, the whole and all of mankind, as a continuum from belief-based functioning to understanding, from savages to sages, from cavemen to humans, from rejecting this very teaching to be fiercely loyal to the old, or a little bit to actually being open and curious and wanting to do it, there is a jump. Everything may be leading to it, but it is far different. The state of being you are in, where you're at once timeless and eternity as a state of being, while also functioning most perfectly, appropriately for the situation, without thinking or planning, following the logos at all times of the dialectic, functioning ideally in time while your self-mind is out of time, that's completely different from being in the world of a believer. There's a jump, a leap. And we saw that may also apply to stage 5 to stage 4 to stage 3 to stage 2. And what Socrates says, hey, what we just said was a jump from stage 4, belief, or let's say over here, belief-based thinking, to understanding. What Socrates just said, it's also true for when you're in this love of understanding, you're practicing the dialectic, you're using pure ideas the way we're using it. We're using it to understand not Tom Cruise or what Janie and Jessica did today, but we're focused on the realm of being. While all of that might be a preparation along a continuum of development of dialectical mastery or skill, there is still a jump from the third, which is still a high state of being, still a good one, still a logos one, you're still kicking ass there, into the second, or true knowledge. There is still a jump. So that's in the text, just as what we saw, the development from belief to understanding is a development that also requires a jump. or this continuum, or formerly the golden analogy, the two-term mean analogy that says you can develop from A to B, and then from A to B to C, from 1 is to 2 as 2 is to 3, arithmetic, from 1 is to 2 as 2 is to 4, geometric, from 3 is to 4 as to 4 is to 6. They're stages of development or incremental improvements, different kinds. One is stepwise, some is more of a leap, some is a medium leap. But ultimately, there is a different kind of leap that is incommensurate. It's a whole different kettle of fish. The fish, it's not in the other kettle, it's in a whole new, different kettle. Why are you putting fish in a kettle? I don't know. That's for you to tell me in the Discord. But there's a new, different kettle and new fish. There's also new fish in the kettle as well. Did you think about that? No. A whole new kettle of fish means new kettle and also new fish. That's the incommensurate jump. That's the golden analogy. The phi ratio. The thing that's most appealing and most beautiful to our senses, to our intuition as human beings, represents that jump. And that was our hypothesis that we were playing with in the last couple of reviews. And we're seeing it here in the text being applied also to that transition from understanding to dropping dead. Before they bury you, of course. Before you, was it? Drop dead before one drops dead, actually. So you come back. Which is interesting because when you start to feel that happening or whatever, some people are afraid, oh, I don't want to die. Don't worry, you come back. It's not the final death. It's a stage in learning. So, and that's knowledge, by the way, stage towards reaching knowledge. So all the processes may lead to it, but it's far different from it, just as understanding differs from true knowledge. True knowledge is experiencing the Logos instantaneously out of time. Understanding is mastery of the Logos through time, through the stages of the Logos or dialectic. In time and out of time. Those who brought Hellenic thought to other traditions, but ignored this practice, ignored my essential practice of what it means to be a true philosopher. So, we've also been talking about this as modern Christians are actually Pauline Jews, and Paul denied the teachings of Jesus. So too, another analogy for you, for your asses, so too, modern philosophers aren't philosophers. They are Aristotelian believers, materialists. So when I go to my YouTube page and it gives me suggestions on what videos to make, it's all Aristotle, Stoicism, which is the language of metaphysics without any of the metaphysics. Physical shit. How to keep a stiff upper lip as you go through the world. Physical stuff. But here we're seeing it again. If you don't recognize philosophy isn't about your physical senses, that's the shadows on the walls of the cave, you can use it to explain it by understanding the principles of Abrahamic religion, explain why people sanctify their personal beliefs, their pathologos, why people are stuck in their problems, why people would rather be entertained than learn, why people are blocked from their spiritual development. Yes, you can understand, you can use true philosophy to understand the problems in the physical world, but true philosophy isn't the physical world. Those principles are not in the physical world. Therefore, if you ignore this practice of separating your soul from your body, you're not really doing philosophy. You're doing YouTube philosophy or modern universities philosophy, Aristotelian philosophy. You're following Aristotle, who was a denier of Socrates, as Paul was a denier of Jesus. And here we see it in black and white and highlighted in yellow and now pink. Those who brought Hellenic thought to other traditions but ignored this practice of dropping dead a bunch of times before you finally drop dead, ignored the essential practice of what it means to be a true philosopher. It's a practice to be a true philosopher. Ain't that interesting? Speaking of the difficulties of doing philosophy while in a physical body, gotta take a bio break. Be right back. Welcome back to me. My interpreter Plato gave only one sentence to describe this spiritual practice of dying. He left that teaching without explaining how one must gather together the soul from the body when it is separating itself outside of the body. Is it a gradual process or attained instantaneously? In missing that key factor, for the understanding of this spiritual practice was left undeveloped. For if the attainment is only seen altogether and at once, then all the processes may lead to it, but are far different from it, just as understanding differs from true knowledge. Those who brought Hellenic thought to other traditions, but ignored this practice, ignored my essential practice of what it is to be a true philosopher. My ministry, like yours, has waited for someone who can see what we have seen and can understand what we have come to know. It is natural that we both have had many interpreters, but among them, some of the most superficial have been protected and maintained by authorities. Yeah, no shit. These are the ones who know better, but are afraid of challenging a traditional misunderstanding. There is one work we have mentioned, the Gospel of John. He started in a most beautifully profound way, but lost his thread, and his work ends in shatters. We both know that this can be... Hang on a second. Right, we're waiting for someone who can understand what we have come to know. But because the most superficial are protected and maintained by authorities, the ones who know better are afraid of challenging a traditional misunderstanding. It can be difficult to challenge one's dearly held beliefs that they are willing to murder for, because murdering others who disagree with you is the fundamental analogy of Abraham. Can be difficult. And the most sociopathic and cruel, sadistic pieces of human garbage are attracted to CEO positions. At the time of the recording, there was the famous CEO who stole the hat from the boy at the tennis game, and the CEO who was caught cheating on his wife at the Coldplay concert. And we all know the Nestle CEOs and so on who say, human water is not a human right. The most sociopathic, terribly ignorant people are rewarded in this system of ignorance to positions of CEOs, popes, imams, political leaders, and so forth. Yes. And that's who are protected by the authorities. Yes, we see that. Thank you, Jesus. John started in a beautiful, profound way, but lost his thread, and his work ends in shatters. We both know that this can always be expected, but the authorities lead many followers into the absurd and hide them from what they most need to know. That's the channel. That's what the game is of this channel. While the authorities are completely ignorant and shouldn't be ruling, the baby has the gun. This channel tries to do its best to lead people into what they most need to know and make it entertaining.
What feminists want is to specifically ruin your life.
See, that's funny. That's funny because it's not true. But feminists believe that because they're ignorant. Like these people. Yes, says Socrates. Yes, authorities have conspired to reduce wisdom to image thinking. Now that's a sentence. Put that on your Facebook wall or your Instagram banner. Authorities have conspired to reduce Authorities have conspired to reduce wisdom to image thinking belief. Earlier, sanctifying the images of the cave of belief. Could you share what John said? Because I have yet to hear about this. Surely the true mystery is always with us and in front of us and eternally present to us. But we cannot believe what our experience reports to us. John caught a glimpse of it in his gospel and said it with charm, but lost his vision soon after and descended into Paul's vision. And this is what human beings are like. Even the best of us, who are doing the best work without dream analysis and philosophical midwifery, may peter out or descend into ignorance, like Mark's story of Jesus. So we're doing our best on this channel to share what everyone needs to know. And here's an example. Started with a glimpse. People have had a glimpse either of enlightenment or what it's like to be outside of your body or the practice of death, or a glimpse of understanding. In that they are functioning really highly through understanding, not quite at that state of being that also draws from that model of knowledge. So whether you come into the game through loving understanding or through a vision that you want to make sense of, either way, this is the game. But maybe we can expand that. Normally people get into the game because they love understanding or because they've had a vision of something, they've had an experience of some kind they want to make sense of. But hey, how about everyone? Everyone wants to remove problems. How about that? Everyone wants to be happy. That's how you get happiness. Maybe you want to be a good person. Midwifery, dream analysis. Maybe you want to have a good effect in the world. So maybe we can reach everyone. I can recall what John actually said in the beginning of his gospel, says Jesus. He said it well. All things came to be through self. And apart from self, not one thing came to be. In self was life. And this life was the light of human beings. And since the light shines in the darkness, but the darkness cannot understand the self, a human being came to be, sent on a mission from God. John was the name given by the self. This very self came to bear witness in order to give evidence about the light, in order that it may have benefit through self. That very self was not the light, but self came in order to give evidence about the light. So he started with some races. So he started as some racers do, as they start with a flash of speed, only to lose their breath after going a short distance. So, nice start, John. Where the hell did you go after this? John gassed out. John became cooked. As they say, he's cooked. And descended into Paul's vision. All things came to be through self, and apart from self, not one thing came to be. So in Platonic or Proclus's Elements of Theology, so Proclus was a teacher of the academy that Plato started, and he tried to create a system of metaphysics following the elements of geometry, which is a model for a complete understanding of geometry. Euclid's Elements of Geometry. Tried to do a similar thing, but elements of theology. And one of the elements is a principle: everything is in self, from self, and returning to self. So, came to be through the self. Okay, so he's got a part of it here. So, it's a good start. But everything is from the self, returning to the self, and all that's happening in self. So, without self, not one thing came to be. Consistent. In self was life. This life was the light of human beings. Light shines in the darkness, but darkness cannot understand the self. You need the light to understand, which is reflecting what we've seen, Jesus' light experience, the light, brilliant light of being as knowledge, true knowledge in philosophy, which requires you to separate from your body, by the way. A human being came to be, sent from God. John was this guy, that's him. And this self came to bear witness in order to give evidence about the light, in order that all may have belief through self. There we go. There's the demise. Belief. Really? What about understanding? What about knowing? Why belief? That very self was not the light, but the self came in order to give evidence about the light. So good start, but then became cooked and gassed. Well, when those few realize what we have said, we can easily see what they will demand, can't we? For surely... Oh my goodness. For surely they will raise the cry for further teachings of the self. They will demand from their priests and ministers insights into the self, into the logos, and for understanding of these ideas, so that they can continue the work we have become a part of. However, where could all those churchmen direct their followers except to our philosophy? Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Wow. So, when the believers wake up to the significance of Abraham's false model of ignorance and the significance of understanding knowledge and knowing the self, they will, like John started, they can even find it in some of their books. John started this way before evolving into all human beings have false beliefs. It's part of being human. That's why midwifery and dream analysis is for everyone. So even John can start well, but will descend into his beliefs. Beliefs block us. Beliefs are bad. Beliefs cause our conflict. Beliefs block us from understanding. So of course John had started all right, but descended into beliefs. Everyone does. It's part of being human. So what? So when believers realize this, when human beings realize this, they will start to demand, hey, John talked about the logos, talked about understanding the light. I want to understand these ideas. I want to experience the light. I want to see what it's like out of my body. I want to know the meaning of life. I want to know my mind as eternity. I want to go beyond that to know the self. I don't want to be stuck in my problems and suffering. I don't want to be murdered or murder others. That's fucking horseshit. Give us some understanding and logos about the self. So Socrates saying, eventually, those few who realize what we have said will start to demand this. So hopefully those few who demand this from their supposed experts, I demand the logos. I demand understanding. I demand to know the self. Hopefully that will start a chain of events where we can all start to become rational and not zombies. Something to look forward to. And by the way, where can those churchmen direct their followers except to our philosophy? Except to this channel. The Balboa translations of Socrates, of Plato, the Philosophical Midwifery book, the Dialogues of Pierre Grimes, and there are a few other ones, but those are the main ones. This book especially. Oh my God, this book. Oh my God. They will demand. When those few realize what we have said, that we can easily see what they will demand. We need to demand this. For they will raise the cry for further teachings about the self. Of the self. They will demand from their priests and ministers insights into the self.
Wow.
Into the logos.
Wow.
And for understanding of these ideas.
Wow.
So they can continue the work we have become a part of.
Wow.
Continue the tradition. Add to it. You don't have to be stagnant. You can add. What are we doing here? We're adding... What are we doing? Adding dream analysis. That's a big one. There isn't a book on that yet. Where could these churchmen direct their followers except to our philosophy? The philosophy. They will end their past struggles. Wow.
Wow.
And begin anew in the life of the Spirit. That's what Logos does. Ending our past human struggles and begin a new way of being. Philodianoia. Then we must face a curious problem, since we both have experienced its tragic side. Why is the traditional view of both of our teachings so popular? We have both seen our teachings descend into this popular view. But how do you understand this transformation? What most want to believe, they wait to insert into whatever teaching is current. Yeah, that's the fucking game. What you want to think, say the CEOs and billionaires, well, you know, I want to have child slavery, so I'll sneak it in because, you know, it's the poor's fault because they didn't lift themselves up from their bootstraps. That's not what the expression means. It means it's impossible to do that. But I'm just going to insert my belief in there. I want to believe that women are less than men, says Jordan Peterson. I'm going to slide that into my study on lobsters for some reason. Yes. That's why we're zombies. We don't have the belief has us. The fundamental pathologos, false belief about reality and image of the self, has incepted us. Thus the significance of midwifery and dream analysis. What they want to believe, they wait to insert into whatever teaching is current. My followers are attracted to the teachings of Paul, and for you, it's Aristotle. Have you ever seen YouTube? All of the philosophy shit is Aristotle. Ah. It doesn't matter how they differ, the result is the same. They both fear the experience of the self. That's it. I'm not good enough. Talk about dream analysis to people, what do they say? Well, my dreams are crazy. You don't want to do my dreams. I'm a whack job. You show that all problems are understandable? Not me. My problems are bad. I'm just a bad person. Fear the mind. I can't be the mind of the divine. I can't be pure beauty. I can't know. I'm just a little small bean. I have to be Cinderella to the stepmothers. I have to be slave to the king. I have to be a follower of Abraham. I have to chant Kumbaya in my church. I'm just a small bean. I can't use my mind. I've got ADHD and autism and narcissism and all of these labels that are forced on us to explain problems without explaining problems that just vilify the self, the mind, and understanding. Same thing with our justice system. It's not that fucking capitalism is causing poverty and the necessity to break the law so you can fucking eat. No, it's just that you're a nasty criminal. Not solving problems. Oh, but you can earn lots of profits when you have slaves because they're not human anymore, they're criminals. You can have black slaves because they're not human, they're savages. You can have Jewish slaves because they're vermin. You can have etc, etc, etc. Fucking savage belief-based thinking that you're willing to insert because you fundamentally fear mind. We're not all the same mind. We can't all get along. Self, some people are worse, including me. I'm a small bean. And logos, understanding. So that's neat. Human beings have a fear. So that's interesting. Why did we all come in with this fear? So that we could accept pathologos. Hey, welcome, Sam. Why did we have a fear? What caused our physical reincarnation? If we have a fundamental fear of self, A, mind, B, and logos, which is, of course, the experience of the divine. The underlying fear that motivates human incarnation and the underlying condition for all human problems is a fear of the experience of the divine. It is just that simple. That's all. It's just that simple. Now, we have a model of states of development of human beings, states of mind. A massive difference, strict dualists. There is no truth, or at least we can't connect with it. We're just small beings. Or believers, others to others, in conflict with the logos, in conflict with others, in conflict with themselves, in conflict with people who are trying to understand. And waiting for the board to catch up. There's a bit of a lag. What's going on? There we go. But also the 3 states of enlightenment, or the 3 states of excellence, or the 3 states of logos or self. What are they? Well, once you've left belief-based cognition, understanding, if you've gone up, if you've reclaimed self-reflection and understanding. To follow the logos in time, understanding, love, and logos. The logos. Fear of the logos was one of those things. We fear the logos. The rational functioning through understanding. We fear mind. What's the second highest state? To grasp the oneness of reality, or the logos, out of time, the eternal, separating the soul from the body, as Socrates has been talking about. Knowledge, or the brilliant light of being, we fear that too. And what's the cause of all of that? The self. Know thyself. So we fear 1, 2, and 3. You cannot solve problems unless you are in one of these states. Because to solve problems, you need to A, understand problems, and B, reflect on the problems. That's logos and ousia. Belief specifically shits on understanding and self-reflection. You are a believer, you do as you're told, you kill who we tell you to kill. That's the image of Abraham. That's the underlying analogy and fixed way of being of all Christians, Jews, and Muslims. Whether you like it or not, it's just the fucking truth. It's just that simple. So anyone who says, but I want to be an Abraham, or I want to be a Jew, Christian, or Muslim, you've got to wake up. You don't want to be. You've been lied to. You are in conflict with yourself, with others in your group, and with the world. You don't need to be. But what will make them loyal to their ignorance and harmful, disgusting, sadistic ways of being is a fear of understanding, a fear of the logos, a fear of the mind, a fear of knowing reality, and a fear of the self, a fear of their true nature. Which is why they're told, oh, you're a sinner. You have original sin. Oh, the devil exists, so fear mind. You're just a small being. You can't understand. Just do as you're told. Really, really gross stuff, but it's where we are and it needs to be said. So, a fear of self, mind, and logos, a fear of the three states of self, a fear of the three states of being that we must evolve into if we are going to solve problems and save our species. It's just that simple. And what's behind our loyalty to our ignorance? Not my religion, not my beliefs. I like my opinions. I'm a realist, which is a funny way of saying I agree with all of my own dumb opinions. It's a fear. Why? That guy in my music class, I've got a right to do it wrong. Why? Why do you fear doing it right? Why would you insist on doing something that harms you? Why do people vote MAGA? Why do we not insist on universal benefit for all beings from every single politician or spiritual leader? Fear of mind, understanding, and self. Interesting, is it not? Doesn't matter how they differ, the result is the same. They fear the experience of self, of the mind, and the logos, which is, of course, simply the divine. That's all. It's just that simple. Put it on a bumper sticker, put it on a fridge magnet, put it on your fridge, take a photo of the fridge, share it on Discord, and once we get 50,000 followers, we will have a competition and you'll win the competition for the best decorated fridge. Or we'll have another one for bumper stickers and another one for embroidered pillows. That's why people don't give a shit that their teachings are not Jesus's, they're Paul's. Because they fear actual understanding, knowledge, and truth of self. And they want an opportunity to insert their fear and their beliefs into their tradition. Just like, why does nobody get into actual Socrates? Why is nobody learning from Pierre Grimes or the Balboa translations? Why, whenever I look on YouTube, it's all Aristotelian philosophy, which is a denial of actual philosophy. Time to address our fear. And by the way, if we have incarnated from the realm of being into the physical world, and our fear is a fear of the divine, it may be specifically the reason we are incarnated is because we have a fear and misunderstanding of the divine that limited our development in higher levels of reality, causing us to reincarnate into the human world, which is full of all of the implications of the fear of rationality, all of the genocides and wealth inequality and extinction events and all of the catastrophes we play out has to be from people who fear understanding, logos, mind, and self. Meaning everyone here has it. And might be why we're here. If it is, then we can come to a conclusion. Therefore, the purpose of every single human being alive is to discover their own specific fear of logos, mind, and self that prevented their development and caused their reincarnation into this world. That's everyone's meaning of life. That's what you're here for. If you don't address it, you play out tragic suffering and repeating problems in whatever manifestation, and we have the whole gambit. There are 8 billion people playing out 8 billion different versions of an ignorance of logos, mind, and self. But if we recognize that and start to tell the truth and have some decency and maturity and integrity, we can say, okay, there are 8 billion people we can learn from. There are 8 billion people who can go through philosophical midwifery and dream analysis to find the root cause of their fear and evolve to create a better world here and continue their evolution beyond without having to reincarnate into human form again. If we can do that, we can A, solve all human problems, and B, develop an excellence so that any living being who's having a problem in any dimension or any level of reality can choose to reincarnate as a human, where we have all of these institutions of learning, not Aristotle and Paul, which is current, the institutionalized fear of logos, mind, and self, but have our institutions based on Socrates, where everyone has food and shelter, not just the fucking billionaires, and we all have access to schools, not Aristotelian Pauline schools, but Socratic schools where we can all go through a reflection on our problems through midwifery and dream analysis. So every soul who's having a difficulty up there would choose to enter our wonderful, wonderful world. A place of learning for every soul. And not just for every soul in higher dimensions, but for every galaxy, every alien species who are having struggles and difficulties can call upon us. People who've gone through it all. Yes, we've gone through the worst caveman savage horse shit, the worst fear of self, mind, and logos, but we got through it. Here's how you get through it. Socrates said it all. Oh, and we killed him, so, oopsie, but we learnt from that. We learnt from what happens if you kill Socrates. It's left to the interpreters of Socrates, all of which have their false beliefs, so they're all going to fall short. Even if they start well, like the Gospel of John, they're going to be cooked. They're going to be gassed. They're going to run out of steam and descend into their ignorance, which is sanctifying the ignorance of their beliefs as if it's God, when it's not. It's the opposite. It's what prevents you from the divine. And why do you sanctify the beliefs of ignorance, the shadows on the wall of the cave? A fundamental fear of self, mind, and logos, which is just a fundamental fear of the experience of the divine. That's all. It's just that simple. Jesus continues. So we can say that our Gnostic thinkers, the ones that we found that were burnt by the church but rediscovered in Egypt in the 60s, our Gnostic thinkers are in agreement with the ideas of the self that we have noted in the Gospel of John, but they do not touch upon your essential practice of dying and death. For there is no greater mystery for mankind than the meaning of one's own death. So not only does this fear of self, mind, and logos manifest as a fear of understanding, also a fear of the practice of death and dying. Which is the practice of philosophy. To die before they bury you. Many times. With the self, there goes faith and doubt. Woof. Wow. With the self, there goes faith and doubt. Say it again for the people in the back. With the self, there goes faith and doubt. Since self-existence is obvious through Since self-existence is obvious though mysterious, and doubt assumes a self that doubts, Wow. How can you have doubt if there is no self having the doubts? The existence of self is obvious. You don't have to have faith in a self. It's mysterious, but it's still there, obviously. But you have to have an idea of a doubting self to have doubts. With the self, there goes faith and doubt. Wouldn't you like to be free of absurd beliefs or faith? Wouldn't you want to be free of doubt? Jesus. So you say our Gnostic thinkers brought your ideas along with them, but not your essential practice, for there is no greater mystery for man than death. The recent interest among those who have survived death, what they call an NDE or a near-death experience, sheds more light on this, doesn't it? For surely, Jesus, they have brought many to realize that there is a cosmic integrity to our cosmos. Ooh.
Wow, 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 wow.
The fears that theistic religions pour down on their believers are not experienced upon death. So all the bullshit fucking child abuse and brainwashing poured on believers of every single religious cult, belief-based group, especially the Abrahamics, you don't actually experience if you have a look around. What do you know? They're fucking liars. The people who have been saying women are less than men for hundreds of years are liars. The people who have been justifying genocide and slavery and torture and the Crusades, the people who are willing to murder anyone that daddy says so, they're liars. They don't know about death and they pour fear. What do you fucking know? I think it's time to wake up and treat these sadistic abusers the way they need to be treated. Take gun away from baby. It's frustrating that it has to be said, but I suppose that's part of where we are. Seems obvious, doesn't it, when you say it out loud? That the liars are liars? Oh, that the abusers are abusers? Oh my god. That the ignorant are ignorant of death? Oh, wow, what a surprise. But everyone's entitled to their belief and to pour their own false belief and ignorance on others, especially their kids. Don't I have a right? No, you don't. That's absurd. You don't have a right to do bad things. You have a right to reflect and remove your badness and evolve and learn. That's what we have a right to. The fears that theistic religions pour down on their believers are not experienced upon death. A new possibility beyond these church teachings may arise. They have learned through these experiences that we are all here to learn and benefit each other. Wow.
Wow.
I can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yes, you can, because you can learn and you can benefit at the same time. I don't believe in you, I understand you.
Wow.
Wow. We're all here to learn and benefit one another. And so that was the, as we pushed the implications of this understanding, which is part of learning, follow the patterns, expand the analogy, push the implications, we came to an image of what kind of a world we would be, what kind of a place for souls and other species in our cosmos. And wasn't it just this? A place where we can all learn and benefit one another? There you go. See? Our cosmic destiny is what unfolds rationally if you use your mind to reflect and understand the mind. It's not a fear. Don't have to use fear and doubt and lies to share this idea. It's just true. It's fun. Jesus jumps in. Learning from one another, you say, is important. And if I am to agree with you, we would need our interpreters to leave to their followers some practice that can achieve that lofty goal. And we call it joining in to the awakening philosophy stream. Learning to read. Correct you are, Jesus. Oh, and of course that practice of separating from the body. Correct you are, Jesus. Some profound spiritual experiences develop by themselves, while others require learning. Some teachers offer freely what they have learned. Like this guy. And Pierre Grimes. Others, like Plato in his dialogues, describe very profound experiences without discussing how these states are to be realized. Ooh. Even Plato, while obviously better than Aristotle, falls into that gap. It's interesting because we've seen the Gnostic Gospels talk about the significance of removing belief for understanding, knowledge, and knowing the self. And we've even seen the same thing in Mark, but not one of them has been able to give a good explanation of those states and how to reach them. Seems to be a theme. Plato stresses the role of dreams. There we go. There we go. Maybe this is why it has all hung on this. Maybe this is the central pivot point. Plato stresses the role of dreams in the life of the philosopher, but says nothing about how to understand dreams. He may actually be ignorant of this, since he fails to understand the dream Zeus sent to Agamemnon. So this may have been where the turning point upon which Plato begins to miss the mark. He runs out of steam, hasn't seen the significance of dreams. Talked about it, quotes Socrates talking about the significance of dreams. Jesus. Yes, Socrates, I experienced the same. I had stressed the need to experience and understand the exalted states of mind, the kingdom of God. Not believe, not fear. Experience and understand. And experiences of divine luminosity. The many versions or depths. You don't want to have one mushroom trip or one NDE, near-death experience, and give up because you think you've seen it all. There are many different versions or depths of divine luminosity. But none of my interpreters explain the nature of each. So you not only experience them, but be able to explain them. Or how to go from one to the other. And maybe understand them in a way that you can guide people through them. Wouldn't that be a good way of functioning? To yourself and others? But everyone, wouldn't everyone like to do this? A dialectician on every corner, instead of a pub. Recall that when Mark explores the experience of the divine luminosity, he adds a dialogue that took place between Moses, Elijah, and myself. The meaning of these events become the subject not of reflection, but of finding some meaning behind the drama Mark attributed to me. So, if there was a dialogue that took place between Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, then that would be a subject of reflection. You could understand that, hey, are you talking about that light? Are you understanding it? Are you able to see that there are different experiences of that light? Can you explain the nature of each? Can you explain how to go from one to another? Wouldn't that be what three people in the light would be talking about? Of course it would. But the fact that Mark didn't include that dialogue tells you he's not doing that. He's doing something else. There is a meaning behind the drama that Mark attributed to him, which we've already looked at as a warning, a tragic warning. Make sure you do have that conversation of understanding and you don't fall into your beliefs. Run out of steam like John, give up and have the loser mentality of losers and just give up, fall back into what's comfortable and normal. That's the tragic story of Jesus. Identifying with the son of David and playing out the steps to be the chosen one and the king of Israel, etc. Otherwise, Mark, who maybe himself didn't understand the nature of knowledge and understanding, logos. Otherwise, he would have included that. Maybe that was his point. Socrates. If that dialogue surfaces, I would certainly like to hear of it. I would also like to learn the role that one called John the Baptist played in your ministry. So, a clue there. Certain people like John started all right, but lost steam. Mark talked of a dialogue, didn't write about it. Therefore, he likely didn't have the understanding himself to be able to write about it. Plato talked about the significance of dreams, didn't write about it. Talked about different exalted states of being, didn't write about it. If you were to write about it, what would you be doing? Writing about the different stages? Writing about how to get there? And how to move from one to another? Wouldn't that be rational? Isn't that in everything else you learn? Any handbook of how to fly a plane or do surgery? Explaining the different stages, how to get there, how to move from one to the next. But what we are seeing is Mark telling a story about what happens if you don't do that. You'll fall into your belief. You will get cooked. You will run out of gas. You'll be gassed and cooked. And a gas cooker. You'll fall into a gas cooker of beliefs. And it's that desire to stuff your belief into anything else that the many have. What we grew up with is normal, comfortable, and obvious. It's also bullshit and sick. Sick ideas of love, sick ideas of knowing, sadism and belief. But we want to stuff it into anything. That's why 99% of philosophy videos on YouTube are all Aristotle. Materialist beliefs, a rejection of metaphysics, no explanation of how to separate the soul from the body, and no explanation of the significance of that as the necessary exercise of philosophy that Socrates stressed. Equally so for modern Christians who are all Pauline Jews, rejecting everything Jesus said about the light and understanding, kingdom of God as a state of mind, to project their own bullshit beliefs that they're familiar with. It's no coincidence that Christian babies have Christian parents, Muslim babies have Muslim parents. It's from childhood. That's where we get our false beliefs. But we can understand that all false beliefs that we identify with, which causes our way of acting, which causes a fixed way of being that limits and blocks our spiritual development, has at its root a fear of self, mind, and logos. 1, 2, 3. The stages above belief. There's belief, and then there's a massive difference. 3, 2, 1. We have a fear of. So if our purpose as human beings is to evolve from belief-based cognition into 3, 2, 1, logos, understanding, mind, reality, being, the light, knowledge, the self, the obvious yet mysterious highest point, then we have to address that fear. We have to address that fear is the cause of human problems called a pathologos. We have to address that basic fear is preyed upon by the Abrahamic religions, that caveman zombie-like thing from our evolutionary past that might have helped cavemen survive before we had reason is being preyed upon. And at the root is a fundamental false analogy. As Abraham's God is to killing people, so too followers of Abraham have to kill others. That's why we have murder and death and accepted as part of the way the world is. We have to address that, and we have to address that behind it is the pathologos, the principle. And behind the pathologos, see what are we doing? Tracing causes back for understanding so we can solve the problem. And behind the pathologos is a fundamental fear of self, mind, and logos. And if there are 8 billion people on the planet and 8 billion people have that fear, creating the conditions for their unique pathologos, then we have to ask the question, what does it say about souls that incarnate into the human experience, given that this is a universal factor? The cause of all human problems is false belief that we identify with, manifested as Abraham and Abrahamic religions and MAGA and whatnot, but also everyone's individual pathologos too. If that's universal, what does it say about all souls? And if we can recognize that, can we make a conclusion that the meaning of life is to transition from belief-based cognition into understanding mind and knowing the self by addressing that fear that we carried with us into our lives through philosophical midwifery and dream analysis. Therefore, we can make a conclusion that the meaning of life for all of us is to master the art of midwifery and dream analysis, freeing us to then move from having addressed our fundamental fear of logos, mind, and self, move through philosophy, including the exercise of separating the soul from the body, to experience reality with understanding, and to move beyond that, the two together we can call wisdom, the experience and the understanding, in depth of its levels, including how to transition so you can both learn and help others to ultimately know the self. Therefore, the meaning of life is simply to learn and help others. That's the learning. Requires an addressing of the fundamental cause, the fear, and the doubt, preyed into, made worse through the bullshit teachings of our justice system, educational system, and our religious systems and political systems. We are making our problems worse. But if we turn around, we can reflect on this fundamental analogy, root cause. We can turn the ship around and start to have fun.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder?
We can have joy and whimsy and childlike wonder, dudes, because we're all in this together. You're all wizards, Harrys. So, pretty neat. It's a fear of self, mind, and logos. Oh, but it's false. Because if you recognize that the self is the highest term, no need for faith or belief, buddy, and no need for doubt, because that assumes that there is a self that doubts. And that self doesn't exist. Transcends existence. The cause of existence. And just as we had that metaphor, as being or knowledge creates our physical existence, like a blacksmith or a tanner or Twitch streamer has a model to base their creations on. There is a mystery behind even this, because as our physical earth is a shadow of being, so too is being a reflection of the mysterious and profound self. Can't have doubts, because doubts are beliefs, false beliefs, and fears about itself. It can't. It's beyond belief. It's a cause of belief. In fact, belief is a much lower reflection, because as the self from the high state, know thyself, reflects into being, so too that reflects into understanding, which functions in time to address the fundamental beliefs that all human beings get, others to others, that cause our problems. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Currently, we just give these people the keys to the car, which is crazy, because we're all here to be helped by the skill of understanding, by philosophers, dialecticians, midwives. That's the game. To realize that this belief-based thinking is the cause of human problems and suffering and conflict and sadism, to be addressed by understanding, which is itself a reflection of pure being, which is itself a reflection of the mysterious self that you are, that was with you the whole time, the most immediate yet the most transcendent and profound. That's the highest mystery that we are here to learn about. And if we learn in this way, we can learn and benefit others as we go, because the practice of this to help others who are stuck in belief, to help them, people with blocks or problems or headaches or all sorts of physical or psychological blocks, or undermining their own self or their goals, that's how we have to practice this to master this skill ourselves. So we have to learn and share as we go. But we can also learn where we missed the mark. Why is it that human beings were attracted to Paul and not Jesus? And philosophers, human beings were attracted to Aristotle and not Socrates? Because we are so attracted to our dumb beliefs that we have never questioned through midwifery and dream analysis, that we want to force it into anything. Sneak our own bullshit beliefs into every conversation, every system. As opposed to the highly evolved way of functioning, to respond to the new by rejecting the old, letting go of the old beliefs and fully embracing the new. That's the high end of the scale. But it does require a jump. As you learn along, there will eventually be a sudden jump where you fully embrace understanding and fully let go of your beliefs. No trying to sneak the old in. That's the cause of problems. But a little bit of Christian. But John started okay, so maybe we could keep it a little bit. No, don't be silly. A little bit of poison in the cake? No poison in the birthday cake. This is fun. You're not losing anything. You're only losing poison, suffering, harm. Yes, people are addicted to it because they're afraid of what's good. That's the issue. You have I've got a right to beliefs. You fucking don't. You don't have a right to harm yourself and others. Why would you want to? That's the issue. Why would human beings seek to want what harms themselves and the world? Why do MAGA vote MAGA? It harms them. We've seen fear. A fear of this understanding, but also knowing yourself as reality and knowing yourself beyond reality as the pure state of self, which is nothing other than a fear of logos and ousia, the intelligible, a fear of the self, or a fear of what Jesus calls the divine, the true divine, self, mind, and understanding. So, if we all have that, because we all have that preyed upon by our pathologos, and then preyed upon by these cults, especially the Abrahamic religions, we have to address that. Why do we fear that? Why do we all get it? What were we doing that we were blocked from going up that made us incarnate into the human race? And how can we help everyone to learn their individual ones, while at the same time, as we saw, everyone can participate in these reflections, because these problems have a universal theme. and you can see your own problems reflected in others. So dream analysis and midwifery, we can all share in. We could broadcast it on Twitch and YouTube and end that thing. HBO Now and on Netflix and on the cinemas. Everyone can enjoy the highest form of entertainment and meaning together. Meaningtainment, we'll call it. And we'll sell lots of tickets. And we'll share the wealth because that's what we're here for. But that's it. A fundamental fear of stage 1, 2, and 3 keeping us tied to stage 4 belief, which is the cause of our problems. So, but there is an art, midwifery and dream analysis, to find that fundamental root analogy that you don't know you're carrying. This past is like my present. When I seeked my excellence as a kid, if I do it now, I'll get it crushed, so I'm going to keep silent or whatever. Or I'm going to crush others so I can be the bully and not the bullied. It's not true. So too, in order to free ourselves from the Abrahamic conflict and murder, we have to find the root analogy. That's Abraham. As Abraham's God was to his son, so too children of Abraham have to murder who they're told to. But we can see it, where it came from, address it with understanding. It's what we're doing today. We are going through the skill of reading, which is also understanding, which is also the skill of healing. So therefore, those who have come along with me, congratulations. Maybe you will find your allegiance to the Abrahamic traditions dissolved, seeing as you found the root cause. If you haven't, maybe you need to go one more step further and see how that particular Abrahamic belief reflects your own pathologos belief, which you can only do in dream analysis and midwifery. That's the significance. Everyone since Socrates dropped the ball when they dropped dream analysis and midwifery. We can pick it up, we can have fun, we can add to the game, and we can uncover our highest purpose, that new way of being, love and logos, philodianoia, which is doing what we're here to do, as Socrates says. We are all here to learn and benefit one another. This is how we do it. Thank you for coming on this journey. I hope you're excited about the next episode. You can join on Twitch, on YouTube, on the Discord. You'll get a notification when we go live. If you want to donate to the channel, there's a link below. Buy me a coffee if you like. Thank you, I appreciate it. Cheers, my coffee is empty. And you can find even a link to the PDF text that we're reading below as well. Thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Look forward to seeing you there.